Hey everyone, this is Devin Moreno, and I'm a Baltimore City investor with many properties throughout Baltimore City and also manage many more, plus work with partners for a total of like 100 properties that we all manage together. And I'm often going through Baltimore City trying to analyze deals, as many you new investors are as well. And we find analysis tools like on Bigger Pockets, they have the quadrant method and all that. Well, what I wanted to do was actually break down a deal kind of the way that I do it here in the city. And I wanted to go first into my first video of doing this into a deal that I almost purchased. I actually put an offer on it. I was excited about it, and unfortunately they accepted someone else's offer. And I had a pretty strong offer too, with $10,000 over asking price and no contingencies. So I couldn't back out of the contract at all. So I thought it was actually a very, very strong contract, but unfortunately that's how good this deal was. Someone else got it anyway. So I'm going to go into this deal and why I thought it was so good. I'm going to go into the numbers and everything I think about, and then how I get those numbers. I'm going to touch up on each individual part. So without further ado, let's go into the deal and let's talk about why I loved this property. All right, first to describe this property, this is actually a massive 3,935 square foot house, and we're not even counting the basement, which is a huge all apartment on its own, so easily into almost 5,000 square feet. And this is a big house located in Hanlon area, Hanlon Longwood. It's actually on the Hanlon Park Lake, and this is near Ashburton. If for those of you who don't know this area, it's actually in West Baltimore, but this is actually where a lot of wealthy African Americans do settle here. A lot of old rich money has been kind of left in this area, and so it is actually taken care of by the city pretty well. You may recognize the name and area from my house hack video where I talked about some of the best places to do a house hack. I do think this area has potential. The type of tenants you'll receive are a little bit not less young professional and more middle-aged professional, but still great area to invest. Now, going into the numbers here, this 6-bed, 7-bath home actually was being sold for $140,000, and the ARV on this house, as found by my realtor, was $325,000. So I'll get into ARV a little bit. How we find that is by looking at comparable homes in the area, other homes with the similar square footage, other homes with the similar bedroom bathroom count, and or at least the bedroom bathroom count that we expect to make it or turn it into. So if it didn't have the bathrooms, maybe we're going to add them. And we look at how much those have sold in, like, let's say the last year. And that came up to $325,000. This makes an enormous wiggle room of $103,000 for this construction. And the best part was it really wasn't even all that necessary to even put that much money into it. It easily didn't need that much. I mean, honestly, just recarpeting and redoing some of the walls, maybe painting and redoing the kitchen and some of the bathrooms. Sorry, the pictures here, I actually was so confident that I was going to get this house. I didn't take any photos of the house thinking, all right, I'll just take the photos once I get it under contract. So I'm unfortunately using the photos that are on the MLS, so they're not the best. But you can see that overall, this is a cosmetic thing. The only real thing that needed to be replaced was the furnace, but overall the piping was good, the electric was good, and I'll go into all the construction costs in my analysis. But so far you can see there's a lot of wiggle room here. Now, the reason that's important is because what I was going to do was I was going to renovate this house to turn it into a rooming house. I can use all the bedrooms. These bedrooms are massive. They're all the size of living rooms. And this is an R6 zone district, so a rooming house is allowed. So essentially, I could, put middle-aged professionals in the area. I actually have a friend who already has a house very similar to this, and he already confirmed, you get a lot of middle-aged professional tenants. I even put up a fake listing just to see who would actually go and try to apply to a place like this. And I found, once again, very consistent. I found good quality tenants. So I knew we could get this place rented and people here would stay long term. When you have a room this big, you don't need to move for space considerations. And of course, we could put up to 6 people in the house, really 7 or 8 if I renovated the basement a certain way. I probably would have just stuck to 7 and turned the basement into a separate unit, and we'll get into that. But there was a lot that I could do here. And the best part is there was a second exit strategy. Let's say I didn't like everything that was going on with the house. Like maybe I wasn't getting the tenants I wanted or wasn't getting the rents I wanted. Well, there's well enough room to also flip this house. And I'm going to go over into the numbers of flipping. That was my exit strategy. Remember, as an investor, I don't flip whole homes for the most part as a primary strategy. That's really a job. I really use it as an exit strategy if I want to get rid of the house. And here it actually works. Now, since I intend to BRRRR this deal, which means to basically buy it, renovate it, refinance, and rent it out, or rent and refinance, because I wanted to do that, I have to factor in what is my future mortgage going to be. All right, so I already know my ARV is $325,000. For those of you who don't know, an ARV is after retail value. It's what the home is going to be worth after it's all fixed up. So with the ARV of that amount, what you have to note here is that a bank will finance that loan. All right, you can go to a bank after you've done all your renovations. You say, hey, can you finance this house? They agree, if they agree with their own appraisers that your house is worth $325,000, then they will give you up to 75% of that value to you in the form of a loan. This repays all of our construction costs, which repays our private lenders and our hard money lenders, even ourselves, if we threw any money into it. And remember, we have a lot to work with here. 70% of $325,000 is a mortgage of $243,750. Actually, that is the $103,000 wiggle room I had mentioned earlier. I apologize. Everything after that is pure profit if we decided to flip it. So you can see flippers were actually really interested in this property as well. You might want to know, why was it priced so low? This was actually a foreclosure. The family, I don't know what the situation was, but they had to move it out quickly, and this thing went under contract within 2 days. We put our offer on day 1. So, this was obviously, like I said, fantastic deal. We know our mortgage, based on mortgage rates as of now, is going to be about 5.25%. This is because while everyone thinks, all interest rates are dropping, it's actually really only for owner-occupied residences, not for investment properties. So most of those are staying relatively stable, and about 5.25%. Of course, we're going to use a 30-year mortgage fixed, so we don't have to worry about any ARM loans or anything like that. So as far as renting the property in this area, what I did was I went on Trulia and I tried to look at how much are rooms going for in the area as far as rent is concerned. And that's a little bit difficult because it seems like rooming houses are not like all that common in this area as much. Now you might think, oh, that must mean there's a lower demand. No, that's not true. It's just not as common. Actually, by and far large, I find if I don't have any competition, then I'm really the only person available. So it kind of depends on your situation. So what you then do is you go on Trulia or Zillow and you find then the studios. Okay, so what you want to do is stay $200 below the studios. And I found in this area, studios go for about $1,000, maybe $950 in some cases. But unlike my rooming house, which would have all internet and all utilities included, they really couldn't compete with that. I have a lot larger gap because I can always say, hey, all utilities are included, all internet's included. You don't have to pay into those. That's money you're saving. So my price I went for each room was $800 a room. And so I went, below studios and then advertised all utilities included. You're not paying any of that. And we even have other services like cleaning services and such that you don't get in a typical house. Remember, these rooms are huge. You can fit your own bedroom and a living room in these rooms, and everyone got a private bathroom. So that's pretty insane as far as a location goes. So that's really important to note when you're, wondering, okay, how is this all working out for you? So with $800 a room, we're looking at $4,900 being brought into this in income every single month. And because it's multiple different tenants, my vacancy factor is actually lower than normal. Generally here, I'll say about 5%, because I don't have to worry. One, they're probably going to be long-term, especially if they're middle-aged, all right? And number two, every time someone moves out, as you'll see in my estimates, I'm actually still cash flowing. As long as I don't lose more than 2 people, I'm still cash flowing on this deal. So let's go into the numbers as far as my expenses are concerned. So on my expenses, we're looking at a total of $1,863 a month just for expenses. This does not include the debt service, which is commonly called your mortgage, but without your taxes and insurance. So you'll see I've allocated $6,900 for taxes. I actually found that by looking at SDAT, which is the Maryland site for looking up up property taxes. They'll say the total section, how much they think the property is actually worth. And now what you want to keep in mind about these burst strategy rooming houses is that the tax assessed value can be easily challenged. See, they have one amount, but I'm buying the house at now a much, much lower amount. So now I can challenge the tax assessor and say, hey, look, you're saying the value is this, but I bought it for $140. So what's the deal here? They'll actually lower my taxable burden because of that, despite the fact that I renovated the home. So this is an advantage that you can take advantage of. So I absolutely love doing this in these renovation deals. The next thing we're looking at is long-term insurance. For a house this big, normally we would say about $1,200 a year, but in this case we're going to say $1,500 a year. So keep in mind, these are yearly rates you're looking at here. The maintenance is $2,400 a month. We estimate, about $200 a month on a house this large for the most part. Obviously, this could fluctuate a little bit depending, but remember, most of the things in this house are going to be brand new, so we shouldn't have a lot of maintenance here. The utilities, we're going to factor in $8,400 a month, and then you'll notice the property management is $3,160. So let me get into why those are so high. So $8,400 a month is like basically $600 plus a month. I mean, what we're looking at here is that we're paying all the utilities on it. Now, we're going to have energy efficient windows and energy efficient furnaces and energy efficient, like everything's going to be energy efficient, but this is still a big house. So you have to factor that in. The property management part, I'm managing it myself. But part of that property management is paying a tenant to clean the house once in a while. In this case, we're actually going to have 2 tenant cleaners because the house is so large and has multiple kitchens. We're going to have 2 of them, pay them $75 each, so we factor that in. We also factored in the internet, which we know is going to be probably about $200, about $150 a month, based on a larger internet plan to get everything, as far as all these devices that are probably going to be connected to it. So, and then we use a network mesh, which are like the Linksys Velops or maybe, the Google Homes, essentially to distribute the internet across the house. So we factored in all of those costs into our estimate. But because we are paying the utilities, that is what we factored. And I know that this number is pretty accurate based on rooming houses that I already own of this exact size. So with all of that added up together, you're seeing that it's $4,900 a month minus the $3,209 a month in all the expenditures, which is the debt service plus the expenses, and you're looking at a total free cash flow of $1,446 a month with a debt service coverage ratio of 2.07 and an ROI of 47.20%. Now, if you guys are curious if those numbers are good, the average cash flow on something like this is going to be a ton lower. Generally, it's about $300 a door. So obviously with this being one door, even if I said $300 for every single tenant in the house, it's still not necessarily hitting the cash flow marks of this. Or it gets close, but basically this is a very, very good cash flow out of one single property. I've essentially created a multi-unit with a single family home. And debt service coverage ratios, banks often look for a 1.25%, and a 1.75% is considered very, very good. So having a 2.07% is insanely good, and it doesn't even make any sense. A bank will probably be like, what is this? So it's actually very, very high. A lot of properties do not hit those metrics unless you get them just insanely cheap, maybe even inherited them. So this is very, very good numbers that we're looking at for this property. So if you're wondering about those numbers that I just mentioned, debt service coverage ratio and ROI, I mean, realistically, all you need to know is ROI is essentially, how long will it take for me to get my money back? Okay, so all the money that I'm leaving in the deal, how long will it take for me to get that back out and into my pocket? And at 47%, essentially you're looking at it takes me about 2 years. This is actually pretty fast as well. It generally takes about 5 years to get these things back, your money. Generally, you're looking at, maybe 15% returns in some cases, in which cases it takes many, many more years. I mean, this doesn't include all the benefits I'm getting because it's such a large house and the principal and everything is so large. I'm getting a lot of principal pay down. I've got a lot of equity in the property. I've got a lot of tax advantages as far as the interest being paid. So this is an incredible deal just to hold. But in debt service coverage ratio, it's kind of basically the same thing as your percentage of the income you're making according to your debt service. They just want to see a certain percentage out. I'm not going to go into the total definition of it, but that's basically what it is. It's important, realistically, if I ever want to take this property and refinance it under like a portfolio loan so that the bank will, wrap up all my property. So that's realistically why we look at those two numbers, or, the ROI is because if you just pay for all this in cash, then yeah, you're making a ton of cash flow every month, but it takes you 10 plus years to get all your money back. So that really doesn't make any sense to do it that way. This is a proper burst strategy method to get your money back quickly, but then at the same time, cash flow heavily. So, and you don't have to do it with a rooming house, but this is just an example. Now, one thing I think a lot of people miss out on is the purchase costs. You see them here. I mean, there's title costs, lender's fees, title insurance. I'm not going to go through all these. I'll make the numbers kind of crazy, but you see them here on the screen. And the other thing to note is my flipping strategy. So here you're looking at, as far as a flip, what if I just wanted to sell this thing? What would it end up doing? And you're seeing here that as far as the acquisition costs and everything, obviously, like I said, you're seeing $150,000, but earlier I said $140,000. It's because I put $10,000 extra on the purchase price to make my offer competitive. So then you have the closing costs as far as selling the property, the construction costs, which we'll get into, and then you'll see down at the bottom the selling costs. It's going to cost me about $30,000 to sell this house. That is super important. What you are looking at is agent's fees, recordation taxes, seller subsidies, staging costs, which in this case I had none just because the size of the house alone is insane. So a lot of people actually forget to factor in all those selling costs when they flip the house. So just note, although I'm receiving a lot of profit here, $22,000 in profit, which, by the way, we haven't factored in the taxes that I'll have to pay on that. I mean, there are ways to get around that, but essentially you can't use your long-term all the long-term expenses that I'm doing for my other properties cannot go against this short-term deal for a flip. So it's really hard to get rid of the taxes on these flips. So that's one reason I don't really like doing it, among every other reason. But the important part here is that if I ever wanted to get rid of the property, it's obviously easily possible. I don't have to worry about it. And so these are numbers that you guys are probably going to want to follow. If you're wondering how I got those numbers, I'll probably do separate videos on them, but that's basically what you need to know. All right, and now we get into the final part of the video where we talk about the construction costs going into this. So this is really a cosmetic update, and we treat it as such. Now, I have in these numbers if I'm going to renovate the basement. That is really important because actually our plan was not to renovate the basement at all. By the way, these numbers do not reflect me renting the basement. I get more rent from this house if I rent the basement out as a separate kind of unit. So just keep that in mind when you're hearing these numbers. I mean, this house insanely cash flows. I mean, I could probably gonna make another $1,000 a month, just off of the basement. So free cash flowing $2,000 for is a ridiculous deal. So essentially, when we go into these numbers, we'll take a look at it. We're looking at, first off, I factor in drawings. We have $1,500 in drawings. Basically, a guy to come out and draw the property as far as an architectural sense. What he's doing is he's showing the electrician, hey, these are where the lights are going to go. He's showing the HVAC guys, hey, this is where the ductwork is going to go. This is where the plumbing is going to go. This is where the vanities are going to go. So that way, everybody is on the same page. Then as far as permits, we have $1,500 for that. Generally, they're about $500 a permit. And then you have demolition. It's $2,500 for demolition. We didn't really think there was going to be a whole hell of a lot of demolition there. That we're ripping out the carpet and stuff, tearing out the kitchens. This is pretty much an average price. I mean, we have really one kitchen we were going to tear out, small set of cabinets, not that big a deal. But just expect your demolition property probably be out $2,000 to $4,000. I mean, a full gut, usually around that $4,000 or $5,000 range, probably $5,000 at max. Then we go into the categories here. You're noticing on the screen here we have concrete, so we're going to go through it. 0.3, you got 4th section masonry, there's none. 5 metals, there's none. Thermal and moisture, this is your siding, your gutting, and your roof repair and such. Once again, this is really just some minor roof repair. We just kind of put it in there just in case. We actually didn't really know. Then you have the openings. Openings are windows and doors and such, and basically we intended to replace pretty much all the windows. You can see windows are insanely expensive, $150 plus $150 for labor. You can probably get them slightly cheaper than that, but we always like to overestimate to make sure everything is good to go. You can get usually $250 a window. And so we go into the finishes, and these are all of your vanities and sump pumps, and you're seeing just all these things listed out. As you can see, I'd like to maintain very, very organized notes so we can get as much estimation is possible. You're seeing all the numbers on the screen, and you can see what I would think they should cost. You're going to see the cost per unit, all right, you're going to see that. And then that's how much I think it should cost per each individual unit. And then, of course, how many we have. So we just plug that in, and it gives us our total number. And then we go back to all of the main parts, and you got, specialties. That's wow factor. I didn't really factor anything in there because I think even if we wanted to flip it, reasonably, you're talking about people would have just been wowed by the giant structure that this thing is. So I didn't really care about that too much. We got appliances. I factor in generally about, we didn't want a dishwasher in the house. I know that sounds a little bit strange with so many tenants, but we want to discourage the use of dishwashers too much where tenants are just letting things pile up, and we want them to wash them as they go along. And we usually have the tenant cleaners kind of maintain that. But essentially, we have a range for $350. We have fridges. Remember, we have 2 fridges. We have 2 kitchens. So we've factored in a lot of money for that because if we have to flip it, we need a really nice fridge in there. Stainless steel microwave, not microwave, but stainless steel fridge and range. Then you got the microwave and then a washer and dryer, which of course we need a high grade one because we need something that will last against 6 different tenants using this thing. So this is definitely a factor to consideration. Next, we got the plumbing. We have a lot of plumbing. We have sub-labor, which is really the labor as far as doing all the plumbing. We estimate about $4,000. That's based on our contractor. Remember, we're only redoing a couple bathrooms and we're redoing a kitchen. So there's no rough-in work. And by a couple, I actually mean 4, so it's still a lot. This is a lot, of things they're doing, but still $4,000 is a reasonable amount for the amount of plumbing that we would have them doing. It's really just vanity installs and just installing the sink. It's not a whole hell of a lot of work, but still it's a lot of it. So factored that in. We needed a new hot water heater. We didn't even trust the one that was already in there, so we factored that in. That includes the labor, the $3,500 mark. But what you're going to find, though, is that we didn't go for a traditional water heater. If we had went for a traditional water heater, this really would have been a $1,000 cost. We went for an instant hot water heater because with 6 tenants in the house, there's no way that a normal water heater is going to keep up with demand with 50 gallons. 50 gallons usually max around 5 people. So in a rooming house with 6, potentially 7, we needed a lot more power than that. So we got an instant hot water heater that would constantly give them hot water throughout their entire stay. Next, we got the HVAC at $9,000. So at $9,000, you're really looking at new rough-in, new furnace, new everything, just new. The reason why is because this was all built in a really old system. We didn't trust it, and we wanted to dual zone it a little bit. So we have $9,000 factored in for all of that we needed. For a normal, smaller size house, you're probably looking around more like $6,000, $7,000. Probably closer to 7. The 6 is the more the cheap end. These compressors and the furnace alone cost you easily $2-3 grand. So ultimately that's really what we're factoring in here. Then you have the electrical for $3,500. This is to reroute all the electrical throughout the house. In a typical house, you're probably not looking at a number quite this large, but it's not going to be that much cheaper. Maybe $2,500. We weren't doing all the lights. It was mainly just the lights that we really needed to get redone. Maybe they had something that was clearly a living room, so it had just one hanging lamp, and so we were like, all right, redo recessed lighting. So, and it was just to make sure the electrical panel was also up to code. And lastly, for exterior improvements, this is like your lawn care and whatnot. We didn't really have to do a lot here, but we factored in $2,000, once again, just to be safe. And so with all that combined, you're looking at $102,678. So, I mean, for many of you, you may be like, okay, how in the hell am I going to afford all of that? Because you still have to purchase the thing. And if we go back and look at the purchase, we actually needed $30,000 just to purchase this house. So obviously we're talking about the $30,000 and $102,000. If you're wondering how I got all that money, it's from, like I said, private lenders. By the way, if you're interested in learning this entire process, then what you can do, if you're interested in private lending, you can, we'll do loan documents and all that. You can just draft up a small private investment, I guess you can say, and I can just walk you through one of these processes. And I can even show you how to private lend. I think I'm going to do a separate video, and if you were to get people beyond your family and friends, some of the methods you can use to find private lenders. But most likely, you're probably also going to use hard money lenders, which, keep in mind, we were using traditional conventional financing to buy this house because it was in a good enough shape. So sometimes it's in such a bad shape, you cannot buy it with traditional financing. You have to use a hard money lender or your own private money. So just note on all of that. If you guys are interested in learning that process, feel free, comment in the section below. Or actually, if you're interested in private lending, then go ahead and just message me directly. You can find my email down below, and that'll be pretty much it for that. So I'm going to do more deals like this. I'm going to do duplexes. I'm going to do, tries, single families, even outside of Baltimore City. Eventually, I'm going to branch out into even DC areas. So if you want to see more analysis where I break them down just like this, let me know. And of course, I'll do them the old-fashioned way where I walk through the house as well. So, and I'll make sure to get no more pictures next time. So, all right then. Well, I will talk to you all very soon.